It's really true. I started looking at things in a different way. Again, that attitude of gratitude. It's one of my favorite phrases. That attitude of gratitude, attitude of gratitude. So, now, let's briefly talk about a technique called EFT, which stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. I call it tapping. And it's basically acupuncture without needles.
Are we on the next page?
We are indeed. It says the basics of EFT tapping. Emotional Freedom Technique. This was originally designed for like phobias. Right? And again, it was a psychologist who discovered this by weird, random events. Yeah. And here's the thing. You may have heard about EFT before. People will say, "Oh, I heard that doesn't work. It's all baloney." Well, it turns out. Remember, I'm a scientist, so I look at things to see, okay, is this bunk or is this, The only thing that people aren't able to do with biofeedback is change their heart rate variability. You can slow your heart rate down to almost nothing. Do all sorts of things with biofeedback. The one thing you cannot affect is the heart rate variability. Now, we all know that if I suddenly start to run, what's my heart rate going to do? Go up because I need more oxygen, and so I breathe faster, right? Even as we sit, the heart rate varies. It's almost like it's on the alert. Okay, is there going to be a change? Do I need to speed up? Do I need to slow down? Right? That's a healthy heart rate. In states of unhealth, there's actually a direct correlation. The heart rate doesn't vary much. It stagnates when I'm sitting slow. And that's the one thing they have never been able to change. EFT, the tapping, actually affects that. You can change it. And it works even if you believe it doesn't work. They had two psychologists who took this training class. They thought it was bunk. They ridiculed Gary Craig, who is the guy who really perfected this. I just studied with him for 6 years, Gary Craig. Traveled all over the country. Amazing thing. So they had two psychologists who knew that this didn't work. And they just asked him, well, do you have any issues, any emotional issues of your own that are unresolved? He says, well, we all do. Awesome. So since you know it doesn't work, and you know it doesn't work, you do it on each other. Right? So no placebo effect. In fact, it was the opposite of placebo effect. They knew it didn't work, and it worked. And the reason it worked is our whole body works on electricity. Why are my arms doing this? What's causing that?
Your brain sends the message.
And what kind of message?
Electrical.
Electrical. Oh, wait a second. So even chemistry is electrical. So water is H2O. So one oxygen and two hydrogen atoms. Anybody know why there are two hydrogen atoms and only one oxygen?
The balance.
To balance what?
The charge.
The electrical charge. Because oxygen has a double electrical charge, hydrogen only has a single charge. It takes two hydrogen to balance. Wait a minute, even chemistry is electrical. Western medicine looks at our bodies as a bunch of chemicals. Well, we're more than that, as we know. In fact, even just the fact that we're electrical is huge. So what the understanding is, if something happens, let's say I'm in a terrible car crash. Okay? Any emotional trauma results in a disturbance in our nervous system. The fancy term is a perturbation. I like to call it like an electrical tumor. And if it's a terrible crash, right, we'll get post-traumatic stress disorder. So in other words, it's a more significant. So the purpose of our dreams, one of the reasons we dream is to resolve issues that happen during the day so they don't become post-traumatic. But in some cases, it overwhelms the brain. Remember we talked about compartmentalization earlier. So if that's the case, if there's this electrical disturbance in our nervous system, what kind of treatment would work on an electrical problem? Electrical. That's why we defibrillate people. When that heart goes into that V-fib, ventricular fibrillation, that's quivering like a bowl of jello, It's an electrical problem. We have to treat it with electricity to get it to stop doing that. But that's why it works. That's why we have such great success, because we're treating the electrical problem with electricity. Okay? So the basic understanding is, if I tap where a nerve comes to the surface of my skin, an electrical signal is sent down that nerve. Right? Just like this watch, right? It's sending a signal to my brain. I'm feeling that, okay? So here's the deal, that's generating the signal. Well, it turns out that our body knows what that electrical disturbance is and can send the electrical signals being generated to that spot. As an example, remember the example of the little boy who was attacked by the dog. Okay? The reason he reacts as an adult is because he has this in his nervous system. It's a knee-jerk reaction. He just stop and think, you know, that is a dog. That reminds me when I was a child, I had an incident with a dog. And I should probably jump now. No, it's instant. Bam! Right? So for the example of someone who was, as a child, we just said, okay, remember as a child, when you were attacked by the little dog, okay? And I always have to start with rating on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 meaning you're freaked out of your mind. What number would it be? Just so we know where we're starting from. And then we use this technique, and I'll show you where we do that, right? And go through it as he thinks about, remembers the incident of being attacked by the dog. Usually, and again, not always, because we're all different, but usually I can cure a phobia in about 15 minutes. My record is 7 minutes on a movie set.
Forever? I mean, that phobia went away forever.
Because once that electrical disturbance is gone, there's no more trigger. Right? And again, it's like a knee-jerk reaction. But once that is gone, right, you remove the nerve in your knee, you can hit that thing, it's not going to trigger. Okay? So it's the same, and that's why it's so exciting. So here's a classic example. I developed a technique based on eye movement that takes away headaches in about 30 seconds. And again, one of these ideas. It's based on eye movement. And I had somebody send me an email, and she said, hey, I saw on the website, does this work on migraines? And so I wrote back and said, well, the thing with migraines is you have to do this technique as soon as you feel the symptoms coming on. Once the migraine sets in, it's like a claw. And this technique doesn't work, but I have another technique that does. And I said I'd be happy to work with it. So she lives up in Seattle, so I called her on the phone. And she'd had migraines for like 20 years. Okay? 20 years. So we're going through this process, and this is on the phone, so I had to email her the spots so she knew where to tap. And we went through the phone, and one of the things that happens when I work with folks is I often get intuitive hits. So I'll just get an intuitive hit. On something. And I'm trying to remember, that's a really wonderful story. But I think it was, I got 14. Just 14. So I said, so what happened when you were 14? And she started crying. I said, I'm sorry that upset you. Can you just talk about it, put into details? She says, well, my mom got remarried, and my stepdad started raping me.
Oh, God.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So, when did your migraine start? When I was 14. And I said, well, what about the migraines when you're 14? That's the only time you wouldn't rape me. He said, well, I had a migraine. Her body, her brain was giving her migraines to protect her. It's 20 years later. She's not in that environment anymore. But her brain now, right, it's in her system, it's in her subconscious mind, right? So any time that she felt threatened or unsafe or whatever, she would give herself a migraine to protect her. So, was the really issue the migraines? No. And that's the problem with most physicians, is they focus on, oh, my shoulder is sore, as opposed to, well, let's see if we can find the cause. I work with a Chinese chiropractor who often discovered, well, it's actually a problem with their hip. So if you adjust their shoulder, well, you adjust their hip and the shoulder pain goes away. You look for the source. So we went and we worked then on the emotional trauma, the post-traumatic stress disorder from the situation with her stepdad. And it resolved, so she still had the memory, but it wasn't a trauma. It was sad, but it wasn't devastating like it was. Guess what disappeared? Her migraines. And for 20 years, they couldn't find anything medically wrong with her. And many things have multiple aspects. That's why I use the example of the car accident. So I had somebody come up to me and they said, Bob, you know, I need your help. And, hey, I'm happy to help. And they said, I was in a bad car accident, I'm having nightmares. And I said, okay, just pick the worst thing of the accident. Just the worst thing. What's the worst thing of the accident? Oh, the headlights coming at us. That's the nightmare I'm having. And I stand up in bed, sweating cold sweat. Right? It's the headlights. Right, a scale of 0 to 10. 10! I'm at a 10! Just thinking about it right now. And you literally see it start to sweat. Awesome, you don't have to worry about it. So we tap, we go through this process, and I say, just focus on the headlights coming at you. Just focus on the headlights, the headlights. We go a couple of rounds. It only takes about 3 or 4 minutes to do a couple of rounds. And I say, okay, on a scale of 0 to 10, how is it now? I'm in a 10! Really? The headlights? Oh, the headlights are no big deal. What do you mean? Well, the headlights are no big deal. Well, what number would you give the headlights? Oh, 1, maybe. Well, you said you were at a 10. What's a 10? Oh, man, it's the sound of the crash. You never mentioned the sound of the crash. So we tap on the sound of the crash. How's it now? I'm at a 10! Really? The sound of the crash? Oh, the sound of the crash, maybe a 1. What? Because what the brain does is like an onion. It puts layers over the worst part of the memory to protect us. And so what we're doing is we're just taking off the layers of the onion, and all of a sudden we got to the core, and it's when he looked over and he saw his best friend all bloody and unconscious. That was the core trauma. And we got to that, tapping on that, went away, and the nightmares stopped. So, good. And the same thing here, just like with the other technique, is if you're tapping on, well, a good example with the migraines, the guy with the migraines. Okay? Assume that I didn't get any intuitive hit, that I was just totally just facilitator. Very good chance. And I always tell people, so when we're working, just tell me if something pops up, even if it seems unrelated. And then I go, oh, that was weird. And I go, what? Oh, it has nothing to do with this. Really? And they tell me what it is. Okay, let's just, turns out that that's linked. Right? They were actually linked. That's, again, the gift of our brains that will try and tell us, hey, these two issues are linked. You can't treat one without the other. Obviously, the first thing we just need to tune into the problem. Okay? Pick out one aspect, I like the traffic accident as a good example, because it's kind of easy to understand. And think about the most troubling part of the accident. One of the things that they discovered is there's a process called psychological reversal. That again, if we believe that we're not worthy of being healed or being free of this, right? Because that should be part of the trauma. Is in that heat of the moment, we could have been told something, and now that's part of the whole thing. And so that belief's going to come up. Right? And they call it psychological reversal because it reverses the effects. It's like the opposite, negative placebo kind of thing. Reverses it. So, and there's discussion about whether this is actually necessary. Right? Now, Gary Gregg, who perfected this, who's an engineer, which is really good because he's analytical, he wants to know details, right? Simplify things. And he used it, he teaches it, others say you don't need that part. But I'll teach it because you might as well have it. So to reverse that psychological effect is you say, even though I have whatever it is, so even though I have, and you're tapping on what I call the karate chop part of your hand, so even though I have this memory of the traffic accident with the headlights coming at me, I choose to deeply and completely love and accept and forgive myself. Now, think about that. Is it possible that the person who's actually responsible for the accident,
Yeah.
part of their trauma is they feel responsible for their family and hurt? See how that can all play? Yeah. I don't know about you, I find it much easier to forgive somebody else than to forgive myself. Much easier. If I don't forgive myself, I'm going to block breakthroughs. Yeah, so that's why I personally like this set of phrase. And it just lists, various examples of that and different ways you can say it. Even though I have this fear of public speaking, I deeply really accept myself. And don't think I added this in here, I didn't. But I like the word choose. I choose to deeply, completely love and accept myself. Because I may not love myself, I may not accept myself, but I can choose, right? I have the free will to choose to raise my arm right now. Oh, that I can do, so I choose to forgive myself. I can't do it. But I choose to. See how that's the step towards, feeling. And we all know about forgiveness, the whole issue of forgiveness. The problem with unforgiveness is the person is still injuring you, even though they're dead. Right? If I don't forgive my uncle, then even though he's dead, he's still affected. So it's actually a gift to me. I'm not saying what he did was right, but what I'm saying is, I'm no longer going to be a victim of you. I'm going to forgive you. So, there. Good. Good, so you just have some of those examples. And if you notice the last page has the picture of where the points are. I also gave you a couple of good references at the bottom of that the last printed sheet with the words. Because there's a Dr. McCullough, he's a natural medicine physician in Chicago, phenomenal, he's got a great website. There's a guy who kind of he calls it faster EFT, so it's like a simplified version. And he's got tons of videos that you can tap along with. Well, if you have a little knowledge, you can take anything you find, anybody doing this tapping stuff, and actually bump it up even more.
Do you do all the points every time?
Yeah,
The whole body?
Yes, when Dr. Callahan discovered it, the psychologist, he had flow charts. You had to do this one first and this one next if it was a phobia. You had to do this one if it's a medical issue. You had to do this if it was a issue. Yeah. So, what Gary Craig found was, if you tap on all of them, he had the same success rate. So you might as well. It simplifies it. Yeah. So let's say let's go to that car crash. So even though I was in that car crash and the headlights were coming right at me, and it freaks me out even to think about it now, I choose to deeply believe, love, and accept and forgive myself. That's just what I'm choosing. And he liked to say it 3 times. So even though I saw the headlights, I choose to deeply believe, love, and accept myself. Even though the headlights are giving me nightmares, I choose to deeply believe, love, and accept and forgive myself. And this is all you have to do. This is the simple. You can get more complex, but this is a simple. And those headlights coming at us. Those headlights coming at us. And your brain will say, man, they were bright. Right? Other aspects. Man, they were bright. Oh man, they were getting closer. It was almost like I couldn't see. The headlights were so blinding as they got closer. They got closer, and I remember they just kept getting closer and closer. I couldn't do anything about it. They just got closer and closer and closer. Right? They were just getting so close, so close. Grab your wrist. Peace. So the very last, after you go through every round, you grab your wrist, you receive a deep breath. At the end of the breath, you say peace. Isn't that ultimately what we're doing this for? Is to get rid of the trauma and have peace. So you do that a couple of times, and then you stop and realize, okay, let me just think about those headlights coming at us. That's weird. Gotta get worked up, gotta get worked up. I have nightmares about this. Huh. I don't feel my stomach turning in knots. I don't feel my heart racing. I remember it. but that's weird. And again, usually when you're doing this, something, all of a sudden you remember the sound of the crash, or you remember. So I went, I traveled and went to it's a 3 or 4 day workshop on using this for medical issues.
Medical?
Medical issues. And I was stunned. And remember, I went through the traditional medical school type training and all that, and I was stunned. But now that I know what I know, oh, this actually makes more sense. And literally, people with multiple sclerosis getting out of wheelchairs, medically impossible. People that are told, you're paralyzed, there's no way that your spinal cord can heal. And walking. And we've heard about people who are strong-willed, right? They say, oh yeah, I'm going to be walking by the end of, by Christmas, I'm going to be walking. Well, there's that strong will is really just influencing the brain and the body's healing. And I'm not saying that every time, obviously, you can have these miracles, but it's just amazing. So in terms of any current medical issue you might be facing, so even though I have Parkinson's, I choose to deeply and completely love and accept and forgive myself. And while I'm at it, I might even choose to love and forgive and accept someone else who may have contributed to me having this. There's a very high percentage of medical issues whose root cause are emotional trauma. And it can be from childhood, it can be from last week, it can be from, and obviously the worse the trauma, the greater the effect can be in terms of we talk about, having people make themselves sick. I'm getting flu, I'm getting flu, I'm getting flu, they get the flu. They weren't exposed to any viruses to get the flu, right? But they get the symptoms of having the flu. Well, that's what doctors again miss. If I'm a hypochondriac and I have the ability to make myself sick, that means my brain communicates with my immune system, which means if it can communicate something positive. So we can use this tapping, right? So even though I have Parkinson's, choose to deeply love and accept and forgive myself. Do that 3 times. Then start here. And whatever the biggest issue of the Parkinson's is for you, it might be the limitation, it might be the tremors, whatever it is that seems of all the stuff that I have to do, that's kind of the meatiest. And I just tap on that. Okay? And I like to rate where I am. If I think about the tremors and how it affects my life, what number would I give it? Probably an 8. Okay, so the tremors that results from this, tremors are a result, and this is often what happens. Man, I feel out of control. I'm not in control of my own body. See what's happening? Literally, the brain is going, well, it's not the tremors. It's just this. It's just the body movement. It's how it's affecting you, how you feel out of control, and how you can't do what you used to do. All that. Does this make sense? Yeah. There was a gentleman at this workshop for medical issues. 30-some years, undiagnosed abdominal pain. Terrible abdominal pain, just debilitating. MRIs, CAT scans, everything's fine. They're just floored. And so, he volunteered to come up and have Gary work with him. So he's tapping on this abdominal pain, abdominal pain, abdominal pain. And again, we always say, so if something, some memory pops in your brain and do that, and suddenly he goes, oh, that was weird. Well, what? Oh, this got nothing to do with this. Well, so what is it? He says, well, I just had a memory from Vietnam.
Huh.
Oh, really? Yeah. So, tell me your memory of Vietnam. He says, well, we were doing, and there was a grenade that was thrown at us, and my best friend took the shrapnel from the grenade, and we didn't have a medic. And I didn't know what to do, and he's screaming, please help me, please help me, please help me. And finally the medic shows up, and he does his best, to try and help the guy. and they get the medevac chopper and get him out, but he died. So we worked on the trauma of that. And then the question came, so where in your friend's body was he wounded? Right here. Right where his 30-year abdominal pain. It was just an emotional trauma. So once we went through the process of healing the emotional trauma from what he saw, what he heard, the emotions he felt, his friend calling for him to help and he didn't know what to do, that frustration, all those aspects, right? It would come up as what's happening. When that was resolved, guess what? It disappeared. But that's why the doctors couldn't find anything. And that's one of the phrases you'll hear is, try on everything. Who knows? So, all of a sudden I went, wait a second. Tapping, and I've been tapping probably for like 8 or 9 years now, 6 years studying with Gary. It's just, I mean, mind-blowing results. It's phenomenal. And then I learned about the brain, the subconscious, and all these things. Oh man, what if we combine them? What if, even if I was tapping, what if I was saying, even on a conscious level, so, how can my body be in cooking time? Produce what it needs to produce, control this, whatever. Yeah, because now we're involving the whole electrical system of the body and incorporating with it, and then if you can, and I believe because of the physical technique of rolling the eyes up, right, as opposed to being in a meditative state normally, where if you think of something to get out of that state, you would tap, it would actually pull us out of the low brain wave. I believe that by keeping those eyes rolled up, and that's kind of my next experimentation phase, to find out that we might be able to even tap in theta as we're doing, the how can I question. I don't know how. I only know it's still now. I declare it. Thankful and grateful for this or something even better. And that phrase you probably heard before, for this or something even better. Because I may, in my forming the command, what I want to say instead, what I want instead, I may think this is what I want, but the higher part of me actually knows, well, what you really would benefit from. And so by saying, for this or something even better, I'm not limiting myself to this narrow thing. I'm open.
Question.
Yes?
If you're doing EFT, is it important that you're actually saying it out loud?
The cool thing is, you don't have to say it out loud. It's good if you can, if you're in an environment you can, because now you're adding the other senses to it. You may be in a situation where you're in a restaurant. This is great for stress release. If you're feeling stressed out, it is phenomenal for stress. And for most people, one or more of the spots will be kind of a sweet spot. Ooh, this is mine. Of all the spots, I seem to feel it more when I'm tapping on this. Right? So if I'm in a situation, I may just want to pick the one spot and tap.
Can you do 2 at once?
Yes, but I like to do one at a time, so that there's no confusion in my poor little body, like limited brain. And this is what's weird, is I'm telling you, but even in situations where if you have tapped before, you can think about tapping. And remember, your brain doesn't know the difference between the real and the imagined, and the same thing can happen. So if you're in a situation that's embarrassing to tap,
No. And what about right hand or left hand or?
I like to use both hands.
And then when you get to the arms, do you tap those wrists?
I do it like this.
How about the holding?
And just hold one or the other, doesn't matter. Yeah. Because this way, I'm tapping 2 at the same time. Do you need to leave?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I really enjoyed it.
Oh,
I
thanks.
used it. Email you.
Awesome. You got a chance to, did everybody get a chance to sign up one at a time?
I did.